A nice girl, bent, hurrying, her skirt a swirl around her legs, her pocketbook at that skewed angle, showing how much she needs to get out of there. The picture black and white, clearly the 50s. She almost runs to extricate herself from between this file of predators in suits, white shirts open at the throat, tall buildings mounting like tombstones around them. Maybe the financial district in which she's trapped, New York? They look like traders, their sharkish smiles, their jackets unbuttoned and theirs in the day's heat, their open mouths full of the words that men catcall after a single woman on the street, their eyes slanting down to look at the breasts lifting her blouse, to check out her ass, savoring her fear, its excitement. They won't do anything. It's broad daylight. Nothing has yet transformed them into a working pack. If only she were not so afraid. She could open her mouth, say something back so stinging their pricks would fall off at her feet. I think you'll understand. Oh, for God's sake, think of my knee and how I can't do that anymore. And you now? Did I hurt you with that improvised twist? Hunting out ecstasy. We sweat, persist. On your half of the bed, the pillow's roughed, while 4 socks flung off Sunday's dust. Modestly volcanic, our elder thrust. Laugh, please, at fires only partly snuffed. Moon-faced where it always stands, our clock grips time with tender hands. Keep on intermittently writing these things about my mother. I'll read another one later. She died in 92, but it's just amazing how far forward into your life you carry your mother. I'm 80 years old, I'm still carrying my mother. She doesn't get heavy. My mother so loved little boys, the way they kicked, trotted steadily and stubbed their toes, the way they reached and refused to give into space or objects denying them. I, on the other hand, love little girls. Little girls sit still and read. I make things with them. It was the dolls of the boys that did me in, the hard, weapon-wielding figurines that tripped me on my way to the John or their bedrooms, the piping ferocity with which one little boy will sick his doll onto another boy or boy sibling, making all those offensive male sounds of climbing aggression and unfettered will. Once on the playground, I saw 4 little boys as they rode the merry-go-round, digging their feet into the dirt, their chins tucked into their little chests, making the rickety thing wheel faster and faster, the mechanism squealing, the grim little boys never letting go. I neither forgot nor forgave how they punished the merry-go-round, even as my own little boy grew into the gentle self of his father. Maybe I should admit how I envy those hard little boys who naturally get away with shit. What if I let my own jaw stick out like that, or whistle like a lout in the street at what pleases me, or speak up fiercely in car, class, or living room, spit foul-mouthed opinions, and just generally shove my bulk around? I guess I'm reading a few poems that are on the angry side. That's all right, you can put up with it. This is a poem called Girl Walking. It's based on a photograph that I think is by Helen Levitt. And it's one of those situations. You see this girl hurrying. You see the laugh, a ringing pleasure at her cousin's joke. Every German nuance accessible to her. Her freshly flown in kin from Chicago, newly introduced to me, telling my marveling mother such a funny piece of news. Not translated for me. Although she once raised her right hand next to a courtroom flag and declared allegiance in American English. My mother's laugh came after the war, after the flag. Aunts and cousins settled well past the throes of disaster. Who was at the door, and Aunt had wondered when the uncle fell inside, beaten by chains wielded in an alleyway. Which cousin was it? in stocking feet who fled over the rooftops to Amsterdam. In my family, the lengthy geographies of escape, the shorter ones of capture. My mother's English never a match for the dark and heavy life overtaking her, right here in the New World. In the Old World, a black and white group on a picnic blanket, a young Tante Laura, a cousin Annie, smiles darkening beneath their wide straw brims. They pause before the wine glasses lift. My mother's voice keeps the neat impress of its early vowels. Her missing jokes reach out to me from deep inside another planetary track, showing how much stays cut from the second tongue. Going back to where the first things learned had shared names, where mother, father, brothers, and cousins said table, said chair or bed, and laughed alike. Scraps. And as you all know, the Sappho scraps were things that came off mummies, they were wrappings. We don't have any whole Sappho, or very little. But Rob could correct that. One, if not winter. That summer, he chased a man all the way to Florida, then having to face his final rejection 6 months before he died. He told you, the straight friend, how he turned to Buddhism, learning to cast off the self and the inconsequent body. But then the longing beat up in him, his untouched flesh choking him in the extremity of his loneliness. In Philadelphia, the pills he'd hoarded and taken left him rotting for 10 days in the heat of his apartment, which after the service you cleaned, sorting his things out in that stench, crying and cursing. Summer belonged to the lives of the loved. If not, winter your portion. 2. No more than the bird with piercing voice is the hammer of this woman's outrage. Likewise, the soft-mouthed kiss that a man offers me. It is always less, although it does not seem so, the proffer of these human beings against what is out there, within and despite our intervention. The blood souring, the turned cancerous cell, the burst heart no more than the bird with piercing voice, although it seems so. 3. You burned me? That licking flame of envy, the child's head slack against her shoulder, a little waft of her light hair, like the pod of a burst milkweed, set in the space between the old couch and where the two of you loosely sit. So much together it scorches my heart. 4. I have to say this comes from watching real goats, because watching real goats is a trip. But I to you of a white goat tell its green adventures, the goat shed next to the low slatternly house on Churchill Road, the flicking of the ebony hoofs in the adjoining field, briskly seen at the level of the ant, wisps of clover dangling from the corner of its wet muzzle, and can you believe the nearby razzing of marsh marigolds clustering above the stones of the brook, alongside the white goat echoing them in the glare of its golden eye. Death does not count as a family member, although it joins all families. Here is how you do not count. Here is how you may not assign numbers to death. Marek Edelman died in his 90s, living an exemplary life in war and peace. Josef Mengele did not. Josef died too in his 90s, enjoying health. As to his example, do not think of it, the cunning butcher of Auschwitz. When Marek Edelman went to the Umschlagplatz, empowered to deselect sick Jews from the camp trains, he took the healthy, and though her mother begged for her life, he passed over a 14-year-old to select Zosha for the last spot remaining. Zosha was his best courier, and she was needed for the resistance. To the end of his life, Edelman remembered the girl he had chosen to pass over to death, how the numbers were not in her favor. And this is a retelling of the Abraham and Isaac story. And this is a good poem to talk about with Hannah Block, who explained to me why the Old Testament uses the word tempted rather than tested. But anyway, so here we are, Mount Moriah, our father Abraham. Abraham walks in his stupor, his dream-driven feet lifting without volition up to the summit. A cruel trick, after all the talk of covenant, to have to take his little son on such a journey. But God will not lose him. With such innocence, Isaac looks to his father and asks where the lamb for the sacrifice might be. In a terror of hope, Abraham answers, God will provide. God tempted Abraham. Why ever should our book treat tempt and test as the same word? On Mount Moriah, Abraham binds the late-born Isaac, lays the cloven wood upon him, takes up the fire, and stretches forth his hand. We dress in the blood of Abraham's obedience. Although a ram appeared in the nearby thicket, and Abraham redirected his blade, I think for no longer than the momentary shape of mercy should we let this God live. And I'm going to finish with some London poems. This poem really talks about, I'm always struck when I go to London, New York, how dirty everything is. You know, you can hardly avoid it, looking at the sidewalks, the walls, everything. And there are a number of things that go on in this poem. I mentioned Vita in the City Museum of The Hague and the fit of oncoming flu. I studied the dingy yellow walls, the struggle of the cream-trimmed woodwork to be brighter instead of flushed with the history that browns every least thing in this ancient conurbation. I feel it moving inside my skin, dragging the murdered queens within the stage of my brain, squirting me with returning plague, Victorian miasma, the nightmare bodies hidden within warped cupboards, bloodless and faded like the severed thumb of that famous De Witte in the City Museum of The Hague. Hung, hustled, and hacked by a mob, on long-term view, his shriveled digit in a cramped box in a vitrine. In London, the lemons have too many pips. The here of here began too many centuries ago, everything a too much swarming memory, a dinginess, an old speak clinging to Band-Aid as sticking plaster. Stepping off the number 10 bus, you may alight here for British Museum. In Jane's country bedroom, the bright lemon walls, the white chenille cover pulled over her comfy bed, streaky with northern sunshine, while outside her broad window the gleaming washes of snow. Hills of Vermont, nothing especially high. In the Cabot Village store, the old joke applies. Ask, how many Vermonters does it take to change a light bulb? Reply, one to change it, another to talk about how good the old one was. We too love the old, even the old across the Atlantic. On the Piccadilly line, on the Victoria, in the brown, the black, and blue stations, the smell of old wet coal suffuses the low, tunneling passages from which the humpbacked cars emerge to roar at us, the dull-coated mice quickening on the tracks below our feet. In New York, rats pop out of rubbish along gutters beside the demolished buildings, making way for the new. I pause in fear of them. My natal city, quite old. The traces of Europe, Asia too, stick like sticking plaster. The rot between Manhattan boards is stale, corrupt, contagious as any other. You cannot rub off, wipe, erase, or diminish the past. Daily, I rise to circle the listings, finding the latest Jacobean oddman played by candlelight, plus the girl who ardently says Juliet's lines as if they had come to her mind that minute, or where the Hamlet-browed pianist sways before me, a whole well-loved concerto in the tumble of his hair and the flash of his hands. If Europeans did not invent ecostrati, it was here, on continent and island, here, even the young Haydn barely escaped the knife, where in church and opera house the voices of damaged children, grown to brittle-boned men, most brilliantly rang. My ears, my feet, move with the crowds past Holborn, St. Martin in the Fields, to cross Trafalgar Square, passing demonstrators, monuments, assailed by post-industrial stinks, a notable waft of sewage coming briefly past St. Pancras on the way to the British Library. Rumbles, squeals, sirens, the hissing traffic of the oil-soaked now. Ecstasy is something any animal could know, but it takes the human to think of purity and betray it. Moore Leonard says, if it sounds like writing, take it out. How can he not know some of my best hours on earth have been spent in reading writing? Luscious, unnecessary, words apoplexing on the page, collecting like the thrush that just alit on the outermost tip of the elderberry branch, shaking it as he leaves, feathers, a pulsation of skin and hollow bone lifting. Do not own every book you like. Thing, and thing, years in gathering, stuffed into every room of your house. They litter the bathroom floor, brown blotched with coffee and tea spill. They also oil up good on the kitchen table. Left with the open pages that face the rain on the porch, I try not to wince at the ruffled mess they dry into. I am my underlinings and soft pencil, taking up all that space in the basement. Even after your back breaking, you haul 10 cartons out to the car for the yearly sale at the town library. From 1,000 paper cuts, your mind undergoing a tiny hemorrhage as your past seeps out the door with them. They have broken you, broken into, and become you. Thank you.
Lorrie, thank you so very, very much. Please tell us there is a collection.
Oh, there always is.
Oh,